you know, the original saga was about the father, the children, and the grandchildren. And I mean, that's not a secret to anybody. It's even in the novels.
And then everybody started saying, well, you're going to do sequels. And I said, gosh, sequels. Well, I guess I could do sequels. You know, I could do 3, you know, of what happens later on. But that was really an afterthought. I don't have scripts. I don't have any story. The only notion on that one is wouldn't it be fun to get all the actors to come back when they're like 60 and 70 years old and make 3 more that are about them as old people. And so that's about as far as that one's gone so far. These, obviously, the first 6 will get finished and will be the film. And then whether I go into a sequel to this is, because I'll also be 70 soon. I'm not sure whether that's going to happen.
Star Wars was a success, but people wanted more. A comic book series from Marvel flourished. A novelised sequel hit the stands. A holiday special popped up on television.
Come on, Mala, let's see a little smile. Come on.
But demand increased. Toys and models were sold. 2 more movies followed. Various spin-offs emerged. More novels were written. The droids and Ewoks had their own animated series. Role-playing games appeared, providing fans with more detail into the universe. Dark Horse Comics secured publishing rights. But eventually the public moved on to other pursuits, and Star Wars went into hibernation. For a time. Hello and welcome to the channel. It's no secret that Disney didn't honour George Lucas's wishes for them to use his story treatments in their sequel trilogy.
The ones that I sold to Disney and everything, they came up to the decision that they didn't really want to do those, so they made up their own. So it's not the ones that I originally wrote.
He handed them everything they needed to be successful.
I have story treatments of 7, 8, and 9 and a bunch of other movies, and obviously we have hundreds of books and comics and everything you could possibly imagine. So, you know, I sort of moved that treasure trove of stories and various things to Kathy, and, you know, I have complete confidence that she's going to take them and make great movies.
His disappointment mirrors our own. There are those of us that recognise the damage that's been done to the property over the last decade. Yes, they've completely failed to respect what came before. With that in mind, I'm sure we can all imagine just how different things could have been. But don't look so despondent, because the true sequel trilogy does exist, and it has for over 30 years. In 1991, Heir to the Empire was published by Bantam Spectra. It was the first of the Thrawn trilogy written by Timothy Zahn, which also consists of Dark Force Rising and The Last Command, which all became New York Times bestsellers. Widely publicised as the sequels that were never made, Zahn's novels reignited Star Wars fandom and sparked a revolution in Star Wars literature. Its influence on the Star Wars expanded universe was considerable. Zahn himself downplays this notion that he restarted Star Wars, saying, "A more accurate statement would be that I was the first person since Jedi who was permitted to stick a fork in the pie crust to see if there was still any steam underneath."
Basically, I got to be the first one to go beyond Return of the Jedi. Okay. So there's been a lot of authors since then, but there's only ever one first, and I got to be that. So that's one of the big reasons, you know, I'm so associated with Star Wars and the expanded universe.
As we know, Star Wars fans were just simmering below the surface, and they just needed something to grab onto, and have been going strong ever since.
To be honest, nobody knew if those books would go anywhere. Nobody knew in '91 whether Star Wars fandom was even out there, because Star Wars fans were very quiet.
Yeah.
Because there was nothing to grab onto.
That's true.
Nothing to make noise about. The Thrawn trilogy proved that the fans were still out there, still eager for Star Wars.
But wait a minute, these are just books. They're not official. Well, please take a look at this quote from Lucas Licensing. If you're still not convinced, please take a look at my last video where I discussed Lucas's involvement in the EU. If your basis for what is canon is that George was involved, then you'll have to apply that same logic to every Disney Star Wars project. Timothy Zahn knew that the books were canon.
I have to ask though, how does it feel to go from being canon to pretty soon you're not going to be canon anymore? Is that a strange feeling to you?
Lucas, when you write for Star Wars, everything you do is Lucasfilm's property.
Yes.
Whatever they want to do with it, that's their right, and it's their property. They're allowed to do that.
Well, absolutely.
I have had fun playing in their sandbox. If they move the sandbox or drain it and add those little pebbles you get, or the wood chips from playgrounds, and take the sand out and put in wood chips instead, it's been fun.
Okay.
And I don't know what they're going to do. There's no reason they have to
absolutely.
destroy the expanded universe. There's no reason they have to acknowledge the expanded universe. Their property, they get to choose what they're going to do with it.
So we might just have to start thinking it as an alternate universe that we
We
love.
might have to. We might have to think of it as some historian really screwed up looking through the records.
He only changed his tune after being hired to rewrite the character of Thrawn for Disney continuity.
Thrawn, as a character, is this phenomenally interesting character, and he was the first one that Star Wars is bringing, maybe last, we'll see. First one they're bringing from Legends, which is all the
Yes.
original EU of Star Wars, into the new canon.
Into canon, yes.
So-
not new canon, canon.
Zahn also previously expressed how difficult a reboot would be.
A reboot would be really, really messy. There are currently 140 odd adult novels alone, not counting children's, young adults, art books, schematics, all that. 140 adult novels. To just say, okay, we're going to wipe those out, especially since many of them are still on the bookshelves, or bookstore shelves. What are you going to do? Are you going to say all these, we're going to stop selling them? Del Rey would not like that. Bantam would not like that. The publishing industry is taking enough of a hit these days as it is. A reboot would be immensely hard to do.
The idea for a post-film trilogy was conceived by an editor at Bantam Books, who proposed a series as ambitious as the films were.
This was one of those out-of-the-blue things. Back in 1988, Lou Aronica, who was head of Bantam Spectra at the time, wrote a letter to George Lucas suggesting that since Lucasfilm didn't seem to be doing anything more with Star Wars, that Bantam would like to pick up the series with a 3-book saga, picking up after Return of the Jedi, where no one had been allowed to write before. All the other books had been prequels or during or novelizations and such. A year later, Lucasfilm found the letter in a stack of unanswered correspondence. They discussed it, I guess, with George, and decided to go ahead with the project. They contacted Lou and told him to get an author for them, and they would talk contract. So the Bantam editors got together, made up a short list of authors in their stable they thought could handle Star Wars, and sent it out to Lucasfilm with samples of our writing. And the people at Lucasfilm decided my style fit Star Wars best of the ones they'd been given, and I got an early November '89, 4 p.m., I think, Monday afternoon phone call.
Zahn was given freedom to develop the direction that the story should go in, with minimal pushback from Lucasfilm. He was only given 2 rules. The series had to take place 3 to 5 years after Return of the Jedi, and no characters killed in the films could return. Although Lucasfilm did request that he change an evil clone of Obi-Wan Kenobi to the new character of Joruus C'baoth. As reference material for world building, Zahn was supplied with the Star Wars role-playing game by West End Games. Alternate names for the novel were The Emperor's Hand and The Warlord's Gambit, which were rejected. The original working title for the novel was Wild Card, which is cool because that's the name of Talon Card's ship. Along with Talon Card, the novel introduced fans to such characters as Grand Admiral Thrawn and Mara Jade. Concerning the latter, it would seem George Lucas was very critical of Mara Jade's cosmopolitan look after she was portrayed by model Shannon McRandall for Star Wars Insider. It is a common misconception that he hated the character, as explained here by author Michael Stackpole.
That's just a rumor that has kind of crawled up through fandom for years and years and years. I know that Tim met George Lucas. They had a sit-down conversation before the first book was done. I know that as with any of the novels, everything is cleared through Lucasfilm. And 100% for anything as major as a love interest being developed for Luke, that's a decision that George would have given a yes or no on.
Where would Luke be now, all these years later? Because I haven't really had to think about it. And I've never read any of the novels or follow-ups. People say, hey, dude, you're married. Mara Jade, ooh, she's smoking hot. I go, well, that would have been nice if they thought of that, when I was actually involved.
Now that we've got a bit of background and hopefully learned something new, I'd like to go over the highlights that I've taken from Heir of the Empire Part 1, and then I can give each book undivided attention in their own video. Okay, so we start out with Captain Pelion on Thrawn's ship, the Chimera. Thrawn was stationed in the unknown regions under Imperial control. He also gained the title Warlord, which was given to him by the Emperor. Thrawn has an extensive art collection. He believes that if we learn about art, we can understand the species, and that helps him out with his war strategies. Thrawn might come across as civil, but as we go on to learn, he's very ruthless. He says he was beginning to understand a race, but only after destroying their world. He believes that an error is not a mistake until it's been corrected. In his mind, the only puzzle worth solving is the complete destruction of the New Republic. Thrawn wasn't just a soldier, he was a true warrior with his eyes set on the final goal, not just on his own personal glory. There's a really great part in page 155 where Thrawn works out the plan to take Leia to Kashyyyk. It's very much kind of like Sherlock Holmes, the way it's written, it's fantastic. We have our first mention of Coruscant, which we know George utilised in the prequels. There, Obi-Wan Kenobi appears to Luke and says goodbye to him for a final time. He tells Luke that he's not the last of the Jedi, but the first of the new. Luke comes to the understanding that a Jedi can't get caught up in matters of galactic importance, that it interferes with his concern for individual people, or droids. Luke's been trying to find out information about the old Jedi Order, but it seems to him that there was a deliberate erasure from the records. The people on the planet Bafash don't like Jedi, some went bad during the Clone Wars. Luke has this really cool ability where he goes into a Jedi hibernation state, so that's kind of like a trance or a coma, and that's for going long trips to avoid stopovers, so that it's also showing travel time there as well. Later in the novel, Luke mimics a call of a crate dragon. It tells us that that's what Obi-Wan did to scare away the Sand People in A New Hope. Mara Jade was the most intriguing character in this novel. She knows of Luke Skywalker and she talks a lot about Darth Vader and the Emperor's death. We get Luke's first introduction to Mara Jade through the Force. He's never felt such a bitter hatred. Mara has often dreamed about killing Luke. Later, Mara uses Luke's lightsaber to cut branches and it's obvious that she's used one before. Lando recognises Mara from somewhere, and it's revealed that she was a dancer at Jabba's palace the day that Luke went for Solo. Mara was known as the Emperor's Hand. There's no records of her activities. She was a shadow working outside the normal lines of protocol. The Emperor sent her to Tatooine to kill Luke, but Jabba wouldn't let her go with the execution party. Her interactions with Luke are a big highlight of the novel. She's very sardonic and she has no time of day for him, but Luke being Luke, he just tries to push her buttons. Leia's also been showing off her Jedi skills. Her and Luke communicate through the Force. She's not very comfortable with having a lightsaber, but she did receive self-defense lessons growing up in Alderaan, and she knows she'll need to get used to letting the Force move her around. So at this time, Leia's married to Han, and he's resigned as a general, and to what he does is he recruits smugglers for the New Republic. Leia's also pregnant with twins, which is a big motivator for the enemy. The Noghri are a species that are sent to kidnap Leia. Leia is later referred to by the Noghri as the Malariush. That means the daughter and heir of the Lord Darth Vader. And they refer to her as Lady Vader as well, which I thought was really cool. Thrawn goes to find a dark Jedi placed by the Emperor on the planet Wayland. We go to Mount Tantus, which is full of technology put there by the Emperor. It's pretty evident that Joruus is crazy, and we're told that he's a clone. The real Joruus C'baoth is dead. He was aboard an Old Republic outbound flight project launched just before the Clone Wars. We learn about the Isla Miri, which are a species that can push back the Force. Thrawn says that he trusts Joruus C'baoth, but points to the Isla Miri just to show how much. Thrawn goes on to promise Joruus C'baoth control of Luke, Leia and her twins. Joruus then communicates with Luke through the Force, which causes him to lose about half an hour that he can't account for. As a decoy, C-3PO is programmed to imitate Leia's voice. We all know that Lando lost the Falcon to Han, but the book tells us that it was in a game of sabacc. Lando now has a yacht-styled ship called the Lady Luck, which is awesome. We're introduced to a character called Ralra, and he's a Wookiee with an understandable speech impediment, so Leia can talk to him. We're told that the Empire enslaved Wookiees, so humans are discouraged from visiting Kashyyyk. Wedge Antilles has a role to play in this story. He's the leader of Rogue Squadron, and he's often passed up promotions. There's a character called Councillor Fela, who is a Bothian who joined the Alliance after the Battle of Yavin, and he has Admiral Akbar arrested for treason. So that's kind of where the book leaves off. So these are just a few of the highlights that I took from the novel. There's obviously a lot more in there to get into, and it'd be really cool if you'd share in the comments your favourite parts of the book. It's also worth mentioning that there is a comic book version of this story, for those of you that are more visual. I can't stress enough, go read Heir to the Empire, the true sequel trilogy for Star Wars, and as I say, share in the comments your favourite moments from the story, and I will see you in the next video, so thank you.
So if we're going to do an admiral, if we're going to do a big military leader, yeah, I could create a new guy, sure. But what about Thrawn? Thrawn is great. Thrawn is a character we all know. Thrawn has a lot of credibility. So then you ask yourself, is it right to use him? And can we use him in a way that's similar to the books? Or are we using him and it's going to go completely into left field? And there have been times when we wanted to use things from the EU and I was like, yeah, but we can't use it that way, so why? I don't want to use it and change it. Mm-hmm. You know, I don't want to use it and make it something completely different. That's rude.
Does the introduction of Thrawn mean that other characters who've helped legend status might be brought in? I mean, we were talking about Mara Jade earlier on, and who knows?
There's always...
That guy said yes.
Yeah, see, I knew this would happen, which is I give Thrawn, but it's like, as soon as you give them, it must be like if you have a child, you give them a toy, and they're like, yay, what else have you got? And it's like, no, play with Thrawn for a little bit.
It lasted for 30 seconds.
Yeah.
I've kind of lost control of Star Wars, so it's going off in a different path than what I intended. But the first 6 are very much mine and my philosophy. And I think that philosophy sort of goes beyond any particular time, because it's based on history, it's based on philosophy, it's based on a lot of things.